can't really normalize with Israel while your people are free to say what they think about it, because the people do not want it, right? The majority of Lebanon does not want to normalize with Israel. So the freedoms have to go if you want to make that happen. That's why he makes the argument that Lebanon is being asked to become another Saudi Arabia or another UAE or another Egypt, not just in its foreign policy, but in what its citizens are permitted to say out loud. There's one last thing I want to touch on, Zoe, before I throw it to you and we say goodbye for the week. And that is it's about a story we just published at Breakthrough News. You can go read it at breakthroughnews.org. It's an exclusive interview with Lebanese journalist Hassan Allet, who is currently in hiding. And he's in hiding in Lebanon right now. You might think, Mo, he must have committed a crime. Why is he hiding? Who's he hiding from? He's hiding from the Lebanese authorities, not for committing a crime, but because he posted on X criticizing Saudi Arabia's blockade on Yemen. That's what he did. That's the case against him. Lebanon's public prosecutor has issued an arrest warrant for Hassan Allet over that post, criticizing Saudi Arabia's blockade of Yemen and criticizing Mohammed bin Salman specifically. This is not, and Hassan is a really prominent reporter in Lebanon. And again, this is not for his reporting. That would also be bad, by the way. But it's for daring to mock Mohammed bin Salman's policy on Yemen. So he wrote that for more than 11 years, the Saudi regime has starved northern Yemen, and that the Yemenis had finally decided to rub bin Salman's nose in the dirt. And for that, the court's public prosecutor in Lebanon, a judge that Hassan Allet says was appointed at Saudi Arabia's behest, which is actually quite common in Lebanon, by the way, for many prominent positions. There's a lot of interference in this country by the Saudis and Americans. For that judge put out an arrest warrant for him. And this isn't the first time, by the way. Back in January, they hauled Hassan Allet in for criticizing President of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, and the government's silence on Israeli violations of the ceasefire. So this is basically an escalation against Hassan. But, I think here's a detail that's worth putting right next to this case. And it's referenced in the article, by the way, written by Asil Saleh, one of our Breakthrough News reporters, who's also fantastic. You should go read everything she does. And she's based in the region. Basically, when the Lebanese National Network, LBCI, turned Hezbollah's leader and its fighters into a cartoon to mock them earlier this year, it's this clip that really set off sectarian tensions across the country, given everything going on. The authorities called that protected speech, which I agree, it is protected speech, even if insensitive and cruel. And the attempted charges against the network were dropped. Because Lebanon is not a police state, it actually has a free, vibrant press. And it has, compared to the rest of the region, especially, it's one of the last places where free speech exists. This region is unfortunately full of many U.S.-backed police states. But now it seems if you criticize the House of Saud, suddenly you're a fugitive hiding from internal security. And Hassan Allet makes the legal point himself, and it does matter very much that as a journalist, he should only ever answer to the publications court in Lebanon. Instead, he was summoned by the intelligence branch of the internal security forces over a post. So that's not just like a technicality. That's really the difference between a press matter and a police matter. And of course, they chose police. I'm not trying to get too specific here, but I think that's an important distinction. So just to step back, it's important to ask who this actually serves. And Hassan Allet makes the argument that this is much bigger than him, that since Joseph Aoun, the president, and the Prime Minister Nawaf Salam were installed, and he uses that word quite deliberately, installed by Washington and Paris and Riyadh, Lebanon has been getting walked step by step towards normalization with Israel. And you can't normalize with Israel, he says, while your people, no, I think this is important. I would say it too. I would agree with this. You can't really normalize with Israel while your people are free to say what they think about it, because the people do not want it, right? The majority of Lebanon does not want to normalize with Israel. So the freedoms have to go if you want to make that happen. That's why he makes the argument that Lebanon is being asked to become another Saudi Arabia or another UAE or another Egypt, not just in its foreign policy, but in what its citizens are permitted to say out loud. So and that means something when you put it on the map. I mean, the same month that Trump is floating this idea of letting Ahmed al-Sharat's government in Damascus help disarm Hezbollah by invading the country, you have a Lebanese journalist, a very prominent one, getting a warrant for insulting Saudi Arabia. These aren't really separate stories. It's really one story. It's a Lebanese state being slowly reorganized around what Saudi Arabia and the U.S. and, in some cases, Israel will tolerate. And he points out that there's like an Israeli stick in the background here. And the reason they can't let the Saudi criticism slide is kind of like mechanical. If you're allowed to mock bin Salman in Beirut, then you can mock him anywhere, right? Lebanon, again, I want to point out, has always been this one place in the region for a very, very long time with much more room to breathe when it comes to speech. So if you get rid of that, then you've really closed that last window. So this is like a pattern of intimidation. And again, not just about silencing him. It's about, he makes this point too in the piece, it's about every other anti-normalization voice watching what happens to him and then deciding that it's really not worth, it's not worth speaking out. So he says he's being detained. His being detained is like a small price to pay next to what's happened to the people around him. They've already paid so much and sacrificed so much. He's lost so many friends and family in this war. He's from the South, homes destroyed by Israeli strikes. And so he says he's determined more than ever to say exactly what is pissing off the Lebanese state and its sponsors right now. And I know Hassan, I've known him for a while. He's, somebody who will always speak his mind, and he's very good at what he does. He's a very good journalist, but even for those who don't agree with him, they should be loud about this, because again, the through line across this whole region right now, from like the Gulf to Cairo, is the same. You normalize with Israel and muzzle anyone who won't go along with it. We know the populations of these countries are not pro-Israel, but they live in these U.S. enforced police states to shut everybody up. Not just about Israel, by the way, about what's happening in their own countries.
Well, Rania, I did want to just add, on breakthroughnews.org, you can find a lot of stories actually about how many of these countries that have normalized with Israel have gone after anti-normalization activists. I think just a month ago, a member of the Workers' Democratic Way in Morocco was detained because of a speech he gave at a Palestine solidarity protest. In Morocco, you basically can go to prison for tweets. Similarly, we know in Kuwait, I think it was the journalist who was being held. I mean, this is all over the region, and I just want to make it really clear, because you said, again, Lebanon is kind of the one of the last places where this free speech is tolerated. And I think maybe for people who are less familiar with the region, that's sort of hard to grasp. But really, in all of these countries where normalization is in process or has already been signed through the Abraham Accords, they are literally police states, and people do not have, in Jordan, there was a journalist who was in prison for over a year because of their cyber crimes law, because she spoke about, I think it was maybe the U.S. bases in Jordan. Anyways, all sorts of things drawing the attention between the complicity of their own governments with the United States and with Israel lands you in jail. And that is exactly, I think, what you are trying to raise the alarm about, what Hassan is trying to raise the alarm about, and why this case is such a serious one.
Absolutely. That's really well said. And I think that maybe I take it for granted sometimes that I live in a place, I live in Lebanon, where obviously there's a lot of violence here because of the Israelis. But again, when it comes to speech, it's a very free place. And it's always been that way. And so to see someone I know who's so well respected and quite prominent literally be in hiding right now because there's an arrest warrant because he criticized the head of a state that isn't even this one, by the way,
right,
is really, really problematic. And it's funny because you think about all the time somebody gets detained in a place like Iran or something. A journalist, for example, you'll see a New York Times story. You're not going to see a New York Times story on Hassan because it's in the name of defending Saudi Arabia.
No.
It's just insane.